Hello, my ghouls, goblins, friends of the abysmal night. If you stumbled upon my channel, I am now your host, Michaela J. And this is a new series that I'm starting called Gothic Americana. How haunted are these roots? Where we explore the Gothic lore and American culture and exactly what the hell that means. Specifically for this first season on this series, we'll be exploring Southern Gothic and Appalachian Gothic and how the hell that ties into everything. So, if you're not scared of the dark, let's get into it. Also, I can't keep this voice up forever, so let's get this shit. So what is goth? Well, goth is a lot of things. It's an aesthetic, it's a music, it's a feeling almost, I would say. They're buildings, hell, it's people. It's a freaking lifestyle, I promise. It's not a phase, it's who I really am. So if you want to get technical, goth refers to the Germanic tribe that was connected to the Romans who considered them to be barbaric. And the term goth today doesn't really relate to that, but if you want to consider goth being a term for the outsiders, then that's your origin. Well, the subculture actually gets interesting is with Gothic literature. So think Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, Bram Stoker's Dracula, and anything ever fucking written by Edgar Allan Poe fucking ever. So that whole dreary, dark, mysterious shit, that's where Gothic literature is known for, and it's created an interest in everything horror by establishing that dreary background and Gothic music that happens there too, and that began to flourish in the 1980s. So the subculture really began with the 1980s UK post-punk scene with the help of bands like Bauhaus and The Cure, and the listeners of this music were considered to be rebels in the time period. I mean, it is the freaking 1980s. We had freaking Ronald Reagan in office, and Margaret Thatcher. Is it really a shock to anyone? But these goths were considered to be rebellious with how accepting and kind of weird they were. So think of the Addams Family, but just like with the dark aesthetic. And today the aesthetic takes shape in forms in many different ways. You have traditional goth, vamp goth, Lolita goth, cyber goth, and honestly, any type of goth you can think of. Now, with that being said, what the hell does that have to do with America? So the term Gothic Americana refers to dark country or like dark folk music in America, but for the purposes of this series, we'll use the term to describe the American dream now twisted on its head, or rather the American status quo of just, that Coca-Cola pop Lana Del Rey sort of aesthetic now twisted on its head and more haunted, or rather revealing the truth of all America's lies and secrets. In America, there are 5 different regions, all with their own dark folklore and dark subculture that I would consider for this series of Gothic Americana. There's Northeastern Gothic or New England Gothic, which cultivates a lot of ghost stories and haunted woods. So think Salem witch trials and The Witch. Then there's Midwestern Gothic. Think of the cornfields are haunted, the neighbors are gonna kill you, and there's a lot of liminal spaces everywhere. Children of the Corn come to mind when thinking of this region. Then there's the Pacific Northwest Gothic, where the region is best described as having cryptids run wild, so think of like Bigfoot and werewolves. Honestly, the best movie example I could give to this is like Twilight or 30 Days of Night. Basically, everywhere in America, the woods are haunted. The difference between the Pacific Northwest and Midwestern Goth and New England Goth is that when a body goes missing, it stays missing. Then there's Southwest Gothic. So think animal skulls, desolate lands, and people who don't seem completely human, and the hills have eyes type of vibe. That sort of thing is what you'll find in the Southwest Gothic, so a little bit of Lost Boys can kind of fit into it, and then Welcome to Night Vale is a great example. And then there's my personal favorite, Southern Gothic. When thinking of this region, think of God has abandoned us, secrets are everywhere, the woods are haunted because someone was lynched in them, and don't go near that river over yonder because that's where Billy Joel drowned. And there's Appalachian Gothic, which could honestly be its own mini-series, but it has so much in common with Southern Gothic that I'll probably be mentioning it a lot there. So the South is my favorite region to study when it comes to Gothic Americana, not only because I'm from the South, Virginia native, born and raised, but also because I think our stories are the most interesting, just to be honest. You have a mixture of like African slave plantation stories mixed in with Bible Belt stories, mixed in with a lot of like indigenous cultures and folklore, and when you get down here, it is kind of a hodgepodge of all that mess, and there's so many like killings and stuff that happen down here that people are just kind of invested into the haunted lore of the South. So the South, right? I'ma need a drink when it comes to talking about the South, because the South is a lot of things. The South is a poor man's breeding ground, a rich man's playground, and a pastor's holy grail. Everywhere in America is a graveyard, but the South is kind of like a living room. History here is not really past. It's very much thriving. And most people who are born and raised in the South keep a special connection to their roots. In Southern Gothic lore, there's an emphasis on religion, but it's more about the abandonment and betrayal of religion and religious figures. You'll find that more than likely in this subculture that you can't trust those who need to be trusted. One of my favorite examples of this is Sharp Objects and how the main character loses faith in her community. Another thing about the South is that there's a fascination with questioning these countries' issues in the past. But instead of being done in a very pretentious way, it's done with a lot of innocence. So think of Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird and how her protagonist explores society. What's very interesting is that there are many different mediums that do this. So consider the South's literature, music, and just any other medium you can think of, and they are addressing issues of sex, race, authority, of course, but all with sort of the aesthetic of the past and decay. The South is haunting because the anguish of the past is still very much present. And we're fascinated with these stories because we too want to understand our pain and solve the mystery at hand. As author and writer M.O. Walsh quotes on the genre, "And though the Civil War is long gone, the American South still suffers from its past in almost every conceivable way, whether it be poverty rates or failing education systems." To conclude, Southern Gothic lore and culture and stuff is very interesting to me, and hopefully you all, because we are still very much living it today, and the facets of which we're living it is explored in many different mediums across the board, whether that be film, literature, or music, which, speaking of music, on the next episode of Gothic Americana, How Haunted Are These Roots, I will be exploring how and why every artist connected to this genre of Southern Goth has conspiracy theories about them selling their souls to the devils and being a part of the occult. So if you're interested in that, make sure you subscribe down below and be on the lookout for that episode. Thank you all for being here with me. I have been your lovely host, Michaela J, to my ghouls, goblins, and creatures of the abysmal night. If you want to see more of my stupid little face, make sure you follow my Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, and I will be haunting y'all later.